size chunks, sometimes you lose focus on the big picture, and so you can get tied into where you are in that passage, but you kind of lose. So this is what I want to do. I want to give you a brief outline, okay, to kind of keep your thoughts together as we go through this. So you ready? So chapter 4 through 8. Now, when we deal with chapter 2 and 3, that's letters to the churches. Chapter number 1 is introduction. All right, it introduces us to the resurrected Christ, the Alpha and the Omega, the beginning and the end. You have a description there, and it also gives us an outline for the book. But chapter 1 and then chapter 2, 3 are letters to the churches. And then chapter 4 through 8 is a picture of heaven. There's a scene in heaven, and also the sealed judgments. All right, so that's what you're dealing with, the sealed judgments in 4 through 8. And then 8 through 11 are the trumpet judgments. All right, there's 3 different judgments that we looked at. All right, 8 through 11 be the trumpet judgments, and 12 through 14 is the woman and the dragon. It kind of takes an abbreviation and gives you some back history of the woman and the dragon. Who's the woman? You don't even remember, do you? Huh? Nope. Who's the woman? Okay, who said that? Yeah, there we go. All right, this fellow, he knows. All right, so yes, the woman is Israel. Who is the dragon? Is Satan. All right, in that particular case, and he was there waiting to devour the child as soon as it was born. All right, so we have that in 12 through 14. It deals with that, and then 15 and 16 are the bowl judgments. This is the last section of judgments, all right? And then 17 through 19 is the fall of Babylon and also the return of Christ, all right? The second coming of Christ. 20 through 22 is the new heaven and the new earth, all right? So if you can keep that in your mind as you're going through this, it kind of lets you know where you are, all right? So we're at the tail end of chapter 19, and of course tonight we're dealing with the return of Christ. All right, that's what we're dealing with. We started with that already a little bit in the previous passages, previous verses. But again, we're talking tonight about the return of Christ. This is going to be the end of man's rebellion. This is going to be the end of the Antichrist rule. This is the Battle of Armageddon. This is where judgment and execution is about to take place. The Antichrist and the false prophet are going to be dealt with, and all the deception that the Antichrist has propagated is going to come to an end. I mean, that's where we are. We've already looked in verse number 9. We looked at the marriage supper, and it's interesting. I want you to notice one thing before we read. But look in verse number 9. This is, and he saith unto me, right, blessed are they which are called unto the marriage supper of the Lamb. Who's going to be at the marriage supper of the Lamb? We looked at this in the last week. Who's going to be there? The church, all right? The church will be at the marriage supper. All right, but then look in verse number 17. And I saw an angel standing in the sun, and he cried with a loud voice, saying to all the fowls that fly in the midst of heaven, come and gather yourselves together unto the supper of the great God. There's 2 different suppers here in this one passage. And so who's going to be at this supper? Anybody know? We'll look at it here in a bit, okay? But let's start again, and let's read from chapter 19, verse 17 down to 21. All right, and that's the little chunk we'll deal with tonight. And I saw an angel standing in the sun, and he cried with a loud voice, saying to all the fowls that fly in the midst of heaven, come and gather yourselves together unto the supper of the great God, that you may eat the flesh of kings, and the flesh of captains, and the flesh of mighty men, and the flesh of horses, and all of them that sit on them, and the flesh of all men, both free and bond, both small and great. And I saw the beast and the kings of the earth, and their armies gathered together to make war against him that sat on the horse, and against his army. And the beast was taken, and with him the false prophet, that wrought miracles before him, with which he deceived them that had received the mark of the beast, and them that worshipped his image. These both were cast alive into the lake of fire, burning with brimstone, and the remnant were slain with the sword of him that sat upon the horse, with the sword proceeded out of his mouth, and of the fowls were filled with their flesh. Now, that's pretty, there's not a whole lot of explanation that needs to be had about that. I mean, it's pretty clear about that. But I do want us to go, and there are a myriad of Old Testament prophecies regarding this particular event. I'm not going to go to every single one of those. That's all I would be doing if that's what we were doing tonight. But I will show you a couple places, all right? So let's go to Psalms. I'm going to give you an Old Testament one. Let's go to Psalms chapter number 2. Now, with that as the backdrop that we just read in Revelation 19. Psalm chapter number 2. Now remember, we've already went over this, but for the sake of being thorough, there have been demonic influences that are operating during the tribulation period to draw people to the Antichrist. There's going to be signs and wonders, miraculous things that are going to be done to make people follow the beast and worship the beast. And so they influence, you remember the 7 heads and 10 horns? The 10-nation confederacy that's going to come against Israel and against believers, I would say. And against Christ, and he gathers all of these together to go against Christ, and they are again wanting to battle against the Lord. But look in Psalm chapter 2, and just with that in the back of your mind, it says, "Why do the heathen rage?" If you remember when we talked about all these plagues, it mentioned, I think, at least 3 times where it says that they knew where these plagues were coming from, and it says, and they refused to repent, basically. And so they were in complete and utter rebellion against God, shaking their fists in the face of God. But let's just read it. Psalm chapter 2, verse number 1. "Why do the heathen rage, and the people imagine a vain thing? The kings of the earth set themselves, and the rulers take counsel together against the Lord and against his anointed, saying, let us break their bands asunder and cast away their cords from us." But I want you to notice the position that God has about this. "He that sitteth in the heavens shall laugh." You see that? It's not a lot of times you see God laughing, but this is one of them, when he's laughing because man and the Antichrist thinks that their rage and their fury is going to matter. And anyway, "the Lord shall have them in derision. Then shall he speak unto them." How does Jesus deal with them? We're going to look at this in more detail. How does he deal with them at this battle? What weapon does he use? His mouth, yes. So notice what he says. "Then shall he speak unto them in his wrath, and vex them with his sword's pleasure. Yet, even though all this is going on, yet have I set my king upon my holy hill of Zion. I will declare the decree. The Lord has said unto me, Thou art my son, this day have I begotten thee. Ask of me, and I will give thee the heathen for thine inheritance, and the uttermost part of the earth for thy possession. Thou shalt break them with a rod of iron." That phrase, rod of iron, is also used in Revelation. He will rule with a rod of iron. "Thou shalt dash them in pieces like a potter's vessel. Be wise now, therefore, O ye kings, be instructed, ye judges of the earth. Serve the Lord with fear and rejoice with trembling. Kiss the Son, lest he be angry, and ye perish from the way, when his wrath is kindled but a little. Blessed are they that put their trust in him." So that's one that kind of alludes or kind of draws our attention to this particular event. Matthew 24 and 25 deal with this. Jude deals with this a little bit, but there's all sorts of prophecies. We're going to look at a few of them as we go on down through here. Let's go to Matthew 25. I gave you one in the Old Testament. We'll do one in the New. 25, verse number 31. This is basically what's going to be happening when this event takes place. "When the Son of Man shall come in his glory, and all the holy angels with him, then shall he sit upon the throne of his glory." What are we talking about here? We're talking about his return when he sets up in Jerusalem, his kingdom. Verse 32, "And before him shall be gathered all nations." Who's coming against him at Armageddon in the book of Revelation? Satan and all the nations with him. All right, so it says, he gathered all nations, and he shall separate them one from another, as a shepherd divideth his sheep from the goats. And he shall set the sheep on his right hand, but the goats on the left. Then shall the king say unto them on the right hand, Come, ye blessed of my Father, inherit the kingdom prepared for you from the foundation of the world. Will there be people in the tribulation period that know Christ and have accepted truth? Will there be people then like that? Some of them will be Jews. There may be some Gentiles along with that as well. In verse number 35, For I was an hungered, and you gave me meat. I skipped some. Then shall the king say unto them, verse 34, on the right hand, Come, you blessed of my Father, inherit the kingdom prepared for you for the foundation of the world. For I was an hungered, and you gave me meat, and I was thirsty, and you gave me drink. I was a stranger, and you took me in. Now remember what's going on. What happens to those who do not take the mark of the beast? They can't buy and sell. They can't, life, it becomes exponentially more difficult during this season if you don't take the mark of the beast. And so there are some that do not. So, but there are people who help each other during this time, I would say, as best they could. And remember, there's also a place prepared for Jews. It's not Masada. Petra. That's it, Petra. That's where some people think it is, that the Lord has prepared for them. And again, the devil tries to attack them 3 different times, and they'll be unsuccessful. But nevertheless, let's naked, verse 36, and you clothed me, I was sick, and you visited me, I was in prison, and you came unto me. Then shall the righteous answer him, saying, Lord, when saw we thee an hungered, and fed thee, or thirsty, and gave thee drink? When saw we thee a stranger, and took thee in, or naked, and clothed thee? Or when saw we thee sick, or in prison, and came unto thee? And the king shall answer and say unto them, Verily I say unto you, insomuch as ye have done it unto one of the least of these, my brethren, ye have done it unto me. So that's what happens to the ones on the right. All right, now let's look at what happens to the ones on the left. Then shall he say unto them on the left hand, Depart from me, ye cursed, and into everlasting fire, prepared for the devil and his angels. For I was an hungered, and ye gave me no meat. I was thirsty, and ye gave me no drink. I was a stranger, and ye took me not in. Naked, and you clothed me not. Sick, and in prison, and ye visited me not. Then shall they answer unto him, saying, Lord, when saw we thee an hungered, or thirst, or a stranger, or naked, or sick, or in prison, and did not minister unto thee? Then shall he answer, saying, Verily I say unto you, insomuch as ye have done it to one of the least of these, ye did it not to me. And these shall go away into everlasting punishment, but the righteous unto life eternal. And again, so you have that, and this is basically what's going on here to some degree. You have it physically going on, but then spiritually, this is not the final judgment. The final judgment will be the great white throne judgment, that where God will judge, or the Lord will judge unbelievers. That's where that will take place. And that is yet to come. But there is a judgment that is happening here in the book of Revelation, and again, that judgment is a literal judgment. It is a physical judgment coming back again to undo all that Satan has done and to eradicate the world of wickedness. That's what he's going to do. So let me get through my notes here. All right, so let's go back to chapter 19 here. In verse number 17 and 18, you basically have the announcement of judgment. All right, he is announcing it. And so let's go back and go through this verse by verse. And I saw an angel standing in the sun. Now, this particular, does that mean that he's actually physically in the sun? Is that what that means? That's not what that means. It means something. We just had something here recently. Was it yesterday that happened? An eclipse? And it was supposed to be a blood moon, and I didn't get up to go see it. I heard about it, and I actually saw some pictures of it that were pretty interesting, but I didn't go outside to see that. But nevertheless, so some people think that this is how this is going to be, is there's an angel that is coming and announcing that the Lord is coming. All right, he's announcing this, and it's going to be more like he's blocking the sun or in the way of the sun. So it doesn't mean standing physically on the sun or in the sun, but he's standing in the way of the sun. Does that make sense? And so, and there may be varying opinions on that, but nevertheless, that gives us something to kind of consider. So, but also remember that there is darkness upon the earth. Remember, during this time, there's all sorts of darkness. I believe with all the volcanic eruptions, with all the earthquakes, with all the wars, with all everything that's going on, that there's so much stuff in the atmosphere that the sun is having a difficult time even shining through. All right, and then you have this what light was left, that angel begins to block. All right, and then it says, and I saw an angel standing in the sun, and he cried with a loud voice. You see this often. We've seen it numerous times, that these angels, they're yelling. I mean, they're yelling, trying to get people's attention, but yet they don't want to listen for some reason. And it says, and he cried with a loud voice, saying to the fowls that fly in the midst of heaven. So who is he talking to? Where's this angel? Where's his message directed? Usually, the messages were directed to men. All right, they were announcing things, or there was an angel that would come out of heaven and pour out a bowl. Sometimes there were some announcements like that. But this particular one, he is announcing or declaring or inviting all the fowls of the air to come to this location. And by the way, I did a little bit of studying on this, and this invitation here for the fowls to come, everything that I looked at, I looked at migrate. Do you know that buzzards, vultures, but buzzards is a southern word, all right? But vultures, and they have those in Israel and the Middle East and Asia and Europe and all that. They have them all over the world. But there's actually a flyway where they actually migrate, certain ones of them, and there's a flyway, and guess where that flyway is? The vultures don't like to fly over main bodies of water like long distances, all right? And so, but where is Israel located? It's actually on the seashore of the Mediterranean. And if you go look this stuff up, I'm telling you, go look this stuff up and verify what I'm telling you. And there is a flyway that comes through the Middle East right there, where birds from Asia and Europe both come down through there. Now, and there's certain times of year that happens. I don't know if it's going to happen exactly that time of year. We're not sure about that. But nevertheless, I mean, because the Lord could tell them to come early or come late or whatever. But nevertheless, so all of these carrion vultures and birds, there are all sorts. There are, ravens, and I even saw some magpies. You know what I'm talking about? You saw some of those in cartoons and stuff like that when I was young, and I'd never seen one like here, but they have them over there. And the crows some of those things, Faye got a picture of them. Some of them stood like this tall. I mean, they're big. And then there's vultures. There's different types of vultures and things like that. But nevertheless, so the call goes out by this angel to gather all of these birds together. And by the way, and we've talked about Armageddon, and we've talked about, blood up to the horse's bridle, and what the possibilities of what that phrase means, and we've looked at that. But there's basically a stretch of 200 miles that's going to be this battle scene where millions and millions, whoever's left that are in the armies of the Antichrist, are going to be dealt with and going to be executed. And it is that 200-mile stretch is where the angel is calling all of these birds together. By the way, and if we have time, we may go look at it. If I wrote that verse down, I got a few verses that I wrote down here, but there's some prophecy about this, that it's actually going to take them 7 months. It's going to take people 7 months to clean out all the bodies that are going to be there. And I'm sure there will be mass graves and that kind of thing, but I'll show you that. We'll get to it. So also the Lord Jesus mentioned this, the invitation of the birds. Go back to Matthew chapter 24. Verse 27. For as the lightning cometh out of the east, and shineth even unto the west, so shall also the coming of the Son of Man be. For wheresoever the carcass is, there will the eagles be gathered together. And I don't know what your version says, but it's eagles here. But this is also, it'll also talk about other various birds that are gathered. He's calling all these birds together to eat the flesh of all these people. By the way, now I don't know what type of eagle they actually. I didn't look that one up. What type of eagle they have in the Middle East, but I do know the eagles that we have here. We have bald eagles, we have golden eagles, we have all that. And I've traveled a little bit, and I have seen eagles. As a matter of fact, I saw one in Ellerby. Not very far away, and he was actually eating a roadkill. I mean, he found a roadkill, and he was eating that roadkill. So eagles do eat dead things, all right? Not just things that they caught, but so they do eat that. But nevertheless. So this is a literal thing that is going to happen. And then in verse number 18, it says that you may eat the flesh of kings, and the flesh of captains, and the flesh of mighty men, and the flesh of horses, and all them that sit on them, and the flesh of all men, both free and bond, small, and both small and great. So who's going to be here? Who's invited to this supper? Everybody else is left. That unbelievers and those that are following the Antichrist and are in his armies, these are the ones that are gathered. And they're all the way from poor to rich, from powerful to no power at all, just the foot soldier, you know. So all of those will be there. Matter of fact, let's go to Zephaniah. There it is. My page, I don't use these pages that much, you know what I mean? But Zephaniah, chapter number 1, look in verse number 14. Everybody there? Zephaniah, not Zechariah, Zephaniah. Chapter 1, verse number 14. The great day of the Lord is near. It is near and hasteth greatly. Even the voice of the day of the Lord, the mighty men shall cry there bitterly. That day is a day of wrath, a day of trouble and distress, a day of wasteness and desolation, a day of darkness and gloominess, a day of clouds and thick darkness, a day of the trumpet and alarm against the fenced cities and against the high towers. And I will bring distress upon men, that they shall walk like blind men, because they have sinned against the Lord, and their blood shall be poured out as dust, and their flesh as the dung. Neither their silver nor their gold shall be able to deliver them in the day of the Lord's wrath, but the whole land shall be devoured by fire of his jealousy, for he shall make even a speedy riddance of them that dwell in the land. So how long is this going to take? How long is it going to take for this battle to last? What does it say? He says he's going to deal with them speedily. Speedy riddance, them that dwell. So, again, another picture there in the book of Zephaniah. And let me just say that nobody is going to escape this. Nobody that's in the armies of the Antichrist is going to escape, and they will all become bird food, basically. And so you like feeding your birds? God likes feeding birds too, but in this particular way, he's invited them to the supper. And this supper is not like the marriage supper. This supper is for the birds. And the main course is those that have risen with the Antichrist against the Lord. All right, so and so that is the announcement of judgment. Now let's look at the accomplishment of judgment. Verse number 19. And I saw the beast and the kings of the earth and their armies. Now I want you to notice something. I don't know what version you have, but and I saw. Notice it says armies plural. You see that? And I saw the beast and the kings of the earth and their armies gathered together to make war against him that sat on the horse and against his armies, singular. Do you see that? So there are several armies against one army, but we all know who comes out of this victorious, don't we? And it's the one who sits on the horse, and this is previous in the chapter, but who is the one sitting on the horse? Faithful and true. He has a name, a vesture dipped in blood, and we looked at that. He's called the Word of God. He's called that in this passage as well. And so this is none other than the Lord Jesus Christ who is returning. And again, he's going against the ones that are making war against him in the armies of the Antichrist. In verse number 20, and the beast was taken, and with him the false prophet that wrought miracles before him, with which he deceived them that had deceived the mark of the beast, and them that worshipped his image. These both were cast alive into the lake of fire, burning with brimstone. All right, let me stop right there. Now, the beast, who is that? That is the Antichrist. All right, then you also have the false prophet. All right, the false prophet, and this is the political side. The beast is the political side. All right, and then the false prophet is the religious side of that Babylon system. We looked at that already, all right? And so this is what he had set up. And he saves them in particular to do what with them? He's not killed and letting the birds eat on them. What does he do with them? He throws them into the lake of fire. This is the first time you see the lake of fire mentioned. Now, it also talks about, in Luke, I think it's chapter 16. It talks about the rich man and Lazarus. You remember that? You remember that instance? And it talks about hell at that. And then the Lord Jesus, he talks about hell. He talks about the abode of the dead. He talks about the burning with gnashing, weeping and wailing and gnashing of teeth, burning forever and ever. He talks about all of that. And but there is coming a time. Chapter 20, verse number 14. Go over one passage there, one chapter. Chapter 20, verse number 14. And it says, and death and, what's the next one? Hell were cast into the lake of fire. This is the second death. So the people that die now that don't know the Lord, that have never or rejected Christ, where do they go? I mean, there's only one of two places, right? Heaven and hell. And so where do unbelievers go? All right, they go to hell, right? And so, but there's coming a point in time where hell is going to be cast into the lake of fire, and that's going to be the eternal abode, all right, from then on. But here, this is the first mention we see of the lake of fire, back in chapter 19, where the lake of fire, again, with brimstone, and brimstone, it is like a sulfuric type accelerant, I guess you could say, like that. I believe that this makes the fire hotter, and also, if you ever smelled sulfur burning, it gives you almost a nauseating smell, a chemically, nauseating smell. And so that's what's going on there. And again, the first ones to be thrown in are the beast and the false prophet. And by the way, there are some that believe in annihilation. You know what I'm talking about when I say that? When I say that some people believe that once you're dead, that's it, it's all over, there's nothing. Jehovah's Witnesses believe that. All right, and so that there's nothing past this life, that's it, and all that. But go to chapter 20, verse number 10. Now remember, in chapter 19, verse number 20, who's thrown into the lake of fire? The beast and the false prophet. You see that? And by the way, these are men. These are men. All right, the beast and the false prophet are men. All right, the Antichrist is going to be a man. And now he will be satanically empowered, but he is flesh and blood. He is a man, all right? And so they're cast into the lake of fire. But then chapter 20, verse number 10, and he carried me, no, that's 21. Hold on. 10. And the devil that deceived them was cast into the lake of fire and brimstone, where the beast and the false prophet are. Do you see that? All right, so that is not, that does away with that whole annihilation thought process. The beast and the false prophet are cast into the lake of fire. A little bit later, Satan is going to be cast into the lake of fire, where they were. Is that what it says? It's where they are, present tense. All right, and so there is no such thing as annihilation. The Bible does not teach that, and it tries to give them an out. Really, that's what it tries to give them to do, an out, so that they can believe wrong or believe right or whatever, and it doesn't really matter because nothing's past this life. But that is an error. That is an error that some people propagate, and so you better get your life right in this world. You better get your life right, because look, you're going to live forever in one place or another. You're going to live forever in heaven, or you're going to live forever in hell. Believers are going to live forever in heaven with the Lord, and we're going to return with Him to rule and reign on this earth. And then unbelievers are going to spend their entire eternity in hell, and then later into the lake of fire, where the worm dieth not and the fire is not quenched, and there is no escape, there is no reprieve, there is no appeal, and that's where you will spend the remainder of eternity. If that's even, the remainder of eternity. How do you even fathom that? That's just forever and ever. That's what that means. Do what? Yeah, I mean, you can't even imagine that. If I was to try to illustrate that, an illustration would not do it justice, because we can't fathom what eternity is. You know, we just can't fathom that. It's never ending. Again, they're the first to populate it, but what was hell prepared for originally? Let's talk about that. It was prepared for the devil and his angels originally, those that rebelled against God. That's who it was prepared for. And of course, we know their work that they began doing and trying to convince people to rise against the Lord and to reject the truth of the gospel, to reject the love of God, to reject all that. And of course, they're going to follow suit and be in hell and later on the lake of fire with them. Now, let's go to verse number 21. Remember, just for sake of, just for remembrance here, remember who the beast is and what he's done up to this point. The beast has elevated himself as God, to be worshipped as God, and he is attempting to rule this earth. And you know, there's a lot of men who've tried to rule the earth. You've had, Alexander the Great would be one. I mean, Rome would be another. All these great, the Persians would be another at one point. Babylon would be another at one point. And Hitler, I think, even tried at some point. But, you know, they didn't ever conquer the whole world fully. But the Antichrist will most likely do that. All right, he will have complete control over the globe until the Lord returns and does away with him. And so he has set himself up to be worshipped. And then the false prophet is the one on the religious side of this that has done miracles and signs to promote the beast, okay? Hey, you need to worship this guy. And all these are working in conjunction to deceive people. And they will be deceived. And there will be myriads of people, lots and lots, millions of people that will be deceived. And then verse 21, it says, "And the remnant were slain with the sword of him that sat upon the horse, which sword proceeds out of his mouth, and all the fowls were filled with their flesh." I mean, there's not a whole lot to this battle. What does Jesus do? He speaks. He speaks, that ends it, and that's it. And I did write down a few verses about this, but I want you to think about this. It's not even really a battle. I mean, they're gathered to battle, but it's not even a contest. You know, you understand that. I want you to think the same Jesus that spoke to the fig tree and it withered. The same Jesus that spoke to the winds and the waves and they ceased. The same Jesus whom demons fled away from. With the power of his word, the Christ rejectors and the rebellious will come to their end with just his word. And let's look at a couple more verses. We got a few more minutes, all right? So let's go to Zechariah chapter 14. Zechariah chapter 14. I've got two passages I want to read, one in Zechariah, one in Ezekiel. Zechariah chapter 14, verse number 3. "Then shall the Lord go forth and fight against those nations, as when he fought in the day of battle. And his feet shall stand that day upon the Mount of Olives, which is before Jerusalem on the east, and on the Mount of Olives shall cleave in the midst thereof, toward the east and toward the west, and there shall be a very great valley. And half of the mountain shall remove toward the north, and half of it toward the south. And ye shall flee to the valley of the mountains, for the valley of the mountains shall reach unto Azal. Yea, ye shall flee like as ye fled from before the earthquake in the day of Uzziah king of Judah. And the Lord my God shall come, and all the saints with thee. And it shall come to pass in that day that the light shall not be clear nor dark, but it shall be one day which shall be known to the Lord, not day nor night. But it shall come to pass that at evening time it shall be light. And it shall be in that day that living water shall go out from Jerusalem, half of them toward the former sea, and half of them toward the hinder sea. In summer and in winter shall it be. And the Lord shall be king over all the earth." Let me read that again. "And the Lord shall be king over all the earth. In that day there shall be one Lord, and his name is one. And the land shall be turned as a plain from Geba to Rimmon, south of Jerusalem, and it shall be lifted up and inhabited in her place from Benjamin's gate unto the place of the first gate and the corner gate, and from the tower of Hananel and the king's winepress. And the men shall dwell in it, and there shall be no more utter destruction, but Jerusalem shall be safely inhabited. Think about what's going on right now in Jerusalem, but there's coming a day it's going to be safely inhabited. And this shall be the plague wherewith the Lord shall smite all the people that have fought against Jerusalem. Now look what it says here. Their flesh shall consume away, they shall stand upon their feet, and their eyes shall consume away in their holes, and their tongue shall consume away in their mouth. They're going to die while they're standing. And it shall come to pass in that day with a great tumult from the Lord shall be among them, and they shall lay hold every one on the hand of his neighbor, and his hand shall rise up against the hand of his neighbor. And so I'll stop right there. So the ones that don't get completely consumed right there, what's going to happen? They're going to start fighting each other. You remember what happened when Gideon was on top of the mountain, and he blew in those 300, they blew the trumpet, and they broke the pitcher, and they had the lamps. You remember that? What happened? What happened to the enemies down there? They killed themselves. They were so worried. Go read the stories in the book of Judges. And this is going to be something similar as well, but I want you to notice something. Their eyes are going to consume in their sockets. Their tongue is going to consume in their mouth. I mean, basically life is just going to be extinguished. All right, one more, Ezekiel 39. Verse number 11. And it shall come to pass in that day that I will give unto Gog a place there of graves in Israel, the valley of the passengers on the east of the sea, and it shall stop the noses of the passengers, and there shall they bury Gog and all his multitude, and they shall call it the valley of Hamon-Gog. Look what it says in verse number 12. And 7 months shall the house of Israel be burying of them, that they may cleanse the land. How long is it going to take to bury all those bodies? 7 months. Yea, all the people of the land shall bury them, and it shall be to them a renown the day that I shall be glorified, saith the Lord God. And they shall sever out of man continual employment, passing through the land to bury with the passengers those that remain upon the face of the earth, to cleanse it. After the end of 7 months shall they search. So 7 months is going to take for them to bury the bodies that are going to be annihilated there at this battle. And that's pretty, anyway, that's a pretty big task. If it's taken, really today, we spend a day, we could bury somebody, not even in a day. We dig a hole, put them in it, and we have equipment to do all that kind of thing. We can dig a hole in just a matter of an hour or so. Can you imagine with all the bulldozers and things like that they have, and track hoes, and the holes that will be dug just to bury all those bodies and to be mass graves like they do in times of war many times. But 7 months. So Israel's going to be collecting bodies and burying them for 7 months when this happens. There's a lot of people who question the Lord's return. One last verse. Bear with me. 2 Peter chapter 3. 2 Peter chapter 3, verse number 3. Knowing this first, that there shall come in the last days scoffers, walking after their own lust, and saying, where is the promise of his coming? For since the fathers fell asleep, all things continue as they were in the beginning of creation. And saying, where is the promise of thy coming? For since the fathers fell asleep, I read that again, didn't I? Yeah, 3 and 4. From the beginning of creation. So there's people that are scoffing. Do you think there's people that scoff even today about the Lord's return? Absolutely, and you know, I know it's been a while. It's been a couple thousand years. You know, it's been that long, and people are going, "Oh, come on, man! We get up every morning just like we always have. You know, we go to work just like we always do. We still have the seasons that we always have: spring, summer, fall, winter, all that. And man, nothing has changed. It's all going to. Man, it's just a joke. And man, you believe in all that? You're crazy." I'm going to tell you, one of these days, they're going to eat their words, and they're going to see the truth. And as a matter of fact, in Revelation, the Bible tells us that every eye will see him. And so, anyway, so don't doubt. Don't doubt. Is the Lord going to return? Look, he said he has done everything up to this point that he said he was going to do. He said, look, you tear this temple down, I'll rebuild it in 3 days. What happened? They tore his body apart, and what happened? He was resurrected on the 3rd day. Let me tell you something. He can make that happen. If he can resurrect from the dead, and he can predict that he resurrected from the dead and do it exactly when and where he chose to do it, I'm going to tell you, he's going to return. And the armies that are going to defy him stand no chance. He's going to defeat them with the word of his mouth. And their eyes are going to consume. Their tongue is going to consume. They're going to die standing on their feet just by the power and the words of his mouth. So don't doubt it, okay? Don't doubt it. Even when scoffers come, let them scoff. And all we can do is give them the truth. Give them the truth. This is what God says. And so, all right. So that's chapter 19, all right? We'll start in chapter 20 next time, all right? Lord, we love you, and again, grateful for your word.